mean, maybe before I start, the first thing I wanted to say is I wanted to pay my regards to Prajnaghosa. So some of you might know of Prajnaghosa, some of you might not, but Prajnaghosa used to be the chair of the Brixton Buddhist Community some years ago, and he's very much responsible for the creation of our community here in Brixton. I don't think if he wasn't for Prajnaghosa, I don't think we'd be here today. I didn't really know him very well, but he died 2 weeks ago, actually. He died 2 weeks ago, yes. So he's on the shrine here. His picture is on the shrine, and I just wanted to basically in a way start by paying my respect to him. And Amaladana is here. Yeah, he came in our community where Maichna and I live, and he brought us a Buddha Rupa of maybe that this size here, maybe a bit bigger, of Akshobhya, lovely Rupa, and apparently he said that Prajnaghosa said that he wanted to give that to the community of Brixton. So I just felt very moved by that as well. Okay, so I'm very pleased to be here. Personally, I'm very, very pleased to be here. I have to say it was a bit cheeky of me because I'm not actually a guest in a way in which I have invited myself to come here. There's various reasons for that. But mainly I realized, I've not done that as a chair. I've not actually come here on a festival day and give a long talk where I was just talking to you. And the reason why I asked is because I want to talk to you. I really want to talk to you. I also want to rejoice in you. And I realized the last time I did that was 2 years ago when I became the chair. And I stepped in as a chair from Viranaga. Viranaga was here. There was a handover ceremony with our president, Parammandu, and I had the chance to give a very short talk, which is 10 minutes. I've got a bit longer now, which is nice, I don't have to hurry, as it were. And I can just be with you. The first thing I wanted to do, and one of the reasons I wanted to also stand here, is to rejoice in you, rejoice in our community. Maitrina talked about it. I think our community is not something to take for granted. I see other communities. I see Maitrina Viranaga sees a lot of communities nodding. Our community has something very special. There is a sense of goodwill, a sense of enthusiasm, of friendship, of friendliness that's quite unusual actually. It's very unusual to see in this way and to experience it in this way. And I feel like I have been on the receiving end of that myself. I have truly benefited from being here, since the last 3 years. And we had our first week retreat, which I think is something to rejoice in itself, a first week-long retreat where we meditated at least maybe 6-7 times a day. There were 37 people in total, 37 of us going on a week-long retreat at Adhisthana, which is the headquarters of Triratna. And we had a few feedback from them, and they said, so Adhisthana is the headquarters of Triratna, they said that our community looked very good. Looked very good. And they also said that we changed the atmosphere of Adhisthana. And they really loved having us. I was there again last week, actually. I was there again last week, and the people of Adhisthana were rejoicing in our retreat. Anyway, it's again not something to take lightly. Adhisthana has seen many communities and many retreats going on, and they are very enthusiastic about us and asking us when are we coming back. We are coming back next year. And then the mayor of Lambeth came. Can you believe that? He came, so we contacted him. Some of you were here on our Monday night dropping meditation class. He came during the announcements, and I'm going to quote him word by word because we exchanged a few emails. And he said, "I totally enjoyed myself. Thank you for inviting me." He's the landlord of this place. He's the landlord of the Everspace building. Technically, we've seen the papers now, and we know who's the landlord. And the landlord is the mayor of Lambeth. We didn't know that when we invited him, actually. but he came. So I think, obviously there's much more to rejoice. But I think this is, it's good. I think the community is going very well, and I just want to thank you all, basically. The other thing that I wanted to share with you, is maybe what's going on with this next phase. But before I do that, I just also wanted to mention about what we are doing today. So today we are celebrating Dharma Day. We heard some of it from Shodamanani. What we are celebrating, we're celebrating the time when the Buddha set in motion the wheel of the Dharma for the first time. Yeah? That happened 2,600 years ago. You could say, in a more sort of straightforward language, you could say that it's the first time that actually the Buddha taught the Dharma and Buddhism started. So we're celebrating the day where the teaching of the Dharma, the teaching of the Buddha, the teaching of the Buddhism came to life. Yeah, and I personally really like this idea of the wheel. Yeah, the image that we use is the Buddha setting in motion the wheel of the Dharma. Yeah. So maybe in our mind's eyes, we can just imagine a wheel. Can you imagine a big wheel? Yeah. Maybe even a cosmic wheel. Yeah. And 2,600 years ago, the Buddha started to sort of turn the wheel. Yeah. And throughout the ages, throughout different lineage and traditions and teachers and friends, people collectively have been turning the wheel. And the wheel is here. The wheel is here today. The wheel is with us in this very day. And we are turning it collectively with our spiritual community. Yeah? And what I'd like to do with this talk, I'd like to highlight 3 points of the life story of the Buddha which enable him to start turning the wheel. Yeah, so you can imagine this big cosmic wheel, and it's not an easy thing to start the wheel of the Dharma. Yeah, and I would like to highlight 3 points, just to say there's definitely more points and qualities that it takes to be able to turn the wheel. But today I just would like to focus on 3 points specifically. Yeah. So let us go back to India. 2,600 years ago, so we've got this magnificent shrine here. We've got a Buddha figure sitting on a shrine. So we might just imagine 2,600 years ago, the Buddha, not being the Buddha, being born as Siddhartha Gautama in a very rich family. His father was a king. His mother actually died after she gave birth of Siddhartha Gautama. But his father was a king, and he was the king of all the province, the king of the Shakyans. And he was always, he was a very wealthy king, had lots of possessions, and lots of powers and status. And he really wanted Siddhartha Gautama to, in a way, inherit his legacy, yeah, and to take on and carry on all the work that is done. Yeah. At that time, when Siddhartha was born, there was a prophecy that this young baby, when it will grow up, will either become a great king or a great saint, yeah, a holy person, a holy man. And you can imagine the king was very much against that idea, because a holy person, in a way, is someone who's renounced the world and renounced any possessions, and in a way will renounce all the wealth that the Buddha will have, Siddhartha will have acquired as a result. So the king was really against that, and he really made sure to do everything to give his son a life of luxury, pleasure, comfort, status, wealth, security, and all of that, so that Siddhartha will never really fully experience the world and will still want to carry on being the king. Yeah? But Siddhartha, growing up, as you can imagine, he went through a tremendous existential crisis. What happened at the time is that he saw the facts of life, and he understood them fully for the first time. He saw old age, sickness, and death. Yeah? And by seeing those facts of life, he realized about the inadequacy of his life in the face of those truths, those realities. You know, he realized that actually the life of comfort and pleasure, the hedonistic life in a way that he's living, that I believe probably many people would be very happy to live that life. You know, you're very wealthy, you have all you want, it's all there. But he saw that that life, in the face of old age, sickness and death, wasn't enough, could not really handle those real matters. Yeah? And he had what we call in Buddhism a positive disillusion. He had a positive disillusion. A positive disillusion is when you see through the superficiality of the life that you're living. Yeah? And you realize that actually that life is not really the life you want to be living. And sometimes it takes really something for you to really understand that. Often it can happen when you have a bit of a shock through losing someone. For me, I realized that a few points in my life, a few difficult points when you come into reality with things that are very difficult, and you realize that your life is just not the life you want to be living anymore. I had a friend once. He was actually on a plane crash. There was a plane crash not that long ago. Everybody died actually. He was on a plane crash. 90 people died, and he survived. And what was interesting about his response is when he came back to his life, the first thing that he's done is change his career. He completely let go of his work. He said, and I talked to him. He said, "Look, I just couldn't do it anymore. This thing happened and I realized life is just too precious. This is not actually what I really want to do." The Buddha maybe saw that in a way of growing up as well. Maybe it might not be that you face something difficult. Maybe you're just growing up and you realize actually, maybe that's not really the life that I want to be living anymore. I remember when I was a child, I spent a lot of time in a holiday camp that was looking after kids by the seaside. I'm from the south of France, in Montpellier. And close to Montpellier, you've got the seaside. And Maichuna and myself, we went there 2 years ago. And there was a place, back in the day, it's not there anymore, there was a place where it was a wonderful, in a way, world in itself. It was lost from everything else. There was no habitation and anything else around it. But there was just this place with little sort of, houses and lots of tents and gazebo and things like that. It could actually, the capacity of the place, it could host actually 300 children. And often during the summer we would have 300 children. And I would go there every year for the summer holiday. My parents actually met there, so this place had a very significant place for me. And actually, I think this place really made me, I really understood what was life about. And anyway, that's just a side note. Twice a month, so I usually used to spend 3 to 4 weeks there. Twice a month we used to go to a place called Tahiti. Tahiti was like the little resort a few kilometers away from where we were. And we were going there twice a month, mainly to have like a little outing, which was quite nice, but mainly also to buy sweets. And I really loved it. I really loved going to Tahiti. I love sweets. I love sweets because of the taste, but I love sweets also because you could trade things with sweets. And they could be quite precious in a holiday camp. So I used to go there, and the place, for me, this place was like, in a way, it was a place of joy, because, there's like lights everywhere, music everywhere, shops, all around, and you could basically buy anything you wanted to. And you had like an hour, and in an hour you were sort of left to your own devices. You would just go into a shop and get as much thing as you can. Anyway, I have been to Tahiti. Even the name is actually quite funny. I have been to Tahiti not that long ago, and strangely, I was very surprised by the place. I was surprised because I just felt, it's such a soulless place. I was like, I couldn't quite believe. It felt really sort of dystopian, a bit sad, and meaningless. Just those flashing lights and sounds everywhere, without any sort of real substance. And sometimes with our lives, it can be a bit like that. Maybe not your lives, maybe the lives of other people, but maybe I'm talking about my life, or maybe even our lives can be a bit like that until we grow up, until we really see the facts of life, and something change within us, and we can see through the superficiality of our lives and change as a result. Yeah. I do actually that if you're here, I do actually think that a spiritual community, is the antidote of the existential crisis. If you're part of a spiritual community, in a way you're serving something that is bigger than yourself. You're serving something, that in a way is beyond yourself and bigger than yourself. And that, I think, is the antidote of living a superficial life. Yeah. Anyway, the Buddha has a tremendous existential crisis. He goes through a positive disillusion, and at that time he sees another sight. And what he sees a holy person. Yeah, so he's in India. In India, you've got a lot of holy person, even these days. And a holy person is someone who actually renounced the world, renounced any sort of worldly activity, worldly pleasure, renounced everything, and in a way find a sort of sense of fulfillment and happiness that comes from meditation and living a noble life. Yeah? And you see them in India. I have been to India many times. I have seen many holy persons. Often what you see is that they shine. There's something quite shining, and they look like beggars. They're often quite filthy, even a bit dirty, because they usually live a homeless life. I remember once I was in Hampi. It's in the middle of India, and there was a holy man who was he was going through the river every morning, and he was doing his morning prayers. The river, for a lot of people in India, but especially in Hinduism, it's a symbol for purity, and you purify yourself, and it's something sacred. And I remember his eyes. He had like beautiful, shining eyes. Eyes that, when you see those looks, you never forget about those looks. It's not that often actually I've seen looks like that in my life. And I remember I was very drawn to that man. And I stayed there for 3 days, and every morning I used to see, I saw what he was doing, and I used to come next to him, trying to leave him some peace, and just staying next to him and just seeing, doing his things. I was 30 years old at the time, and one morning I was trying to stay basically on a rock, just next to the river, and he was doing his prayers in the river, and while he was doing his prayers, I fell down. I fell down in the river, and I was all drenched, with my backpack and everything. He turned around. He knew I was there. He turned around, he looked at me and he said, God wanted you to take a bath today. Which for him, as a holy person, he has the significance of purifying yourself, as it were. Anyway, it was quite a revelation for Siddhartha Gautama, because in a way it was completely different the way that he was living his life. He had all the material possessions you can think of, and inside is feeling empty. Yeah, there's a sense of a lack somewhere. And then he's seeing a holy person who doesn't possess anything, doesn't have anything, feel content and happy. Yeah? And he has this vision. He has this vision that there is a way out of his life, and there is another type of life that he can actually live. And at that point, he can't go back anymore. He can't go back to the way that he was living his life, and he decides to go forth. He decides to renounce everything that he has, all the pleasure, all even the connection somehow, all the security, the wealth and all of that. He leaves everything behind and he goes forth. Even his hair, so apparently he shaved his head and he gives his clothes away and he crosses the river and he goes into the jungle. He goes into the jungle at night and he's terrified, but he's determined. He goes on a quest of freedom. That is the most important thing for him. And that quest lasts for about 6 years. And he tries lots of practices, he meets lots of community, he makes connections with teachers, and he tries very, very hard. And there is a point, after 6 years, that he realized that wherever he tries, he made actually quite a lot of progress, but there's more to go. And at that time, he has an intuition that the bliss of meditation and a tranquil mind is the way to liberation. And at that point, he finds a tree, which we call the Bodhi tree, actually, in Bodh Gaya. He finds a tree and he sat there. I just want to say something about Bodh Gaya and the tree where the Buddha gained enlightenment. I just want to say something before I carry on. I have been there myself, in the same trip, on that same trip where I fell in the water. It was before that. It was actually the first step I've had when I went to India for the first time. I was basically 30 years old. For my 30th birthday, my friend, they offered me a trip to go to India, which I think was very, very generous. I was a mitra, but I was still very new to Buddhism, I think, at the time. And I was really exploring my spiritual journey. And I really wanted to go to India. I just thought that meeting the land of the Buddha was the right thing to do at the time. And I wasn't just interested in going to Bodh Gaya or just seeing all the pilgrimage places. I wanted to go to India as well and other places. But I just thought that maybe the first step should be Bodh Gaya for 2 reasons. The first one is because, in a way, it will mark the journey in a very significant way, going and meeting the consciousness of the Buddha where he gained enlightenment 2,600 years ago. That would be incredible. Also, one of the other reasons is because I've never been to India before, and I was a bit concerned about having a bit of a cultural shock. And I was thinking, if you go to Bodh Gaya, because it's a touristic place, in a way there will be so much tourists, and people will be adapted to tourism, that it will be a good transition. Little did I know. I found myself, and I think again there was maybe out of luck or out of synchronicity in your life. I think once you enter the spiritual life, the universe helps you in some sort of strange way. Anyway, I basically landed in Bodh Gaya, and I've realized that I was there during the Kalachakra initiation and the convention. The Kalachakra initiation is the biggest Buddhist gathering in the world, and there were around 200,000 Buddhists, mainly monks and nuns, in Bodh Gaya, little tiny town, 200,000 people, and the Dalai Lama was there doing the teachings, every day. And I just landed into this incredible atmosphere. It was absolutely overworldly. I've never seen anything like that in my life. I mean, there were monks and nuns from all traditions in the temple. I mean, it was just ram. You couldn't walk in. I didn't even have a place to sleep. I mean, that's another story. I'm not going into it. And during the daytime, they had this gigantic gazebo, which could host thousands and thousands of people, where the Dalai Lama will basically do the teachings, and other leaders will come and do the teachings. I actually saw the Dalai Lama giving teachings. And then at 5 o'clock, we will all proceed and go to the Mahabodhi temple, which is the place where you can actually see the Bodhi tree. The Bodhi tree is still there. It might not be exactly the same tree, but it's a descendant of the fig tree that the Buddha came enlightened with. And then at 5 o'clock, we will just circumambulate around the Bodhi tree. And the reason why I want to share that with you is because I think that changed me. It changed me because it was the first time that I was in touch with so much devotion in my life. I never seen that much devotion in my life. But also it was the first time where I saw humanity in that place worshipping love, wisdom, and compassion. Yeah, worshipping a transcendental vision. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people trying their best to follow that vision. And that marks you, that leaves you something that stays with you and changes you. And what happens with that is that you develop Shraddha. Shraddha means faith. Shraddha Malini. Shraddha, our teacher Bhante Sangharakshita translated faith, Shraddhin, there you go, as what's deepest within you, responding to what's deepest in the universe. Yeah, what's ultimate within you, responding to what's ultimate in the universe. Yeah, and there I was in this place, fully, basically embracing Buddhism, embracing that vision, and embracing Shraddha. Anyway, so the Buddha finds a tree and he sits there at the Bodhi tree. He sits there and he sits there in meditation. It stays for a while, and at that point, in a way, at that point, something revolutionary just happened in the cosmos. Yeah. In a way, at that point, a new consciousness has entered the world, and Siddhartha Gautama dies, and the Buddha was born. And what happened to the Buddha 2,600 years ago, I think it's a bit of a mystery. In a way, I think it's inconceivable. It goes beyond reasons. It's not something I think you can explain fully with words and concepts. It's wordless. But the Buddhist tradition talks about it. And the Buddhist tradition talks about it in many different ways. But one of the ways in which the Buddhist tradition talks about is at that point, the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, gains a new type of consciousness. Yeah. And what happens is that the Buddha gained a new way of being conscious, which is completely unselfish. Yeah, that's what happened under the Bodhi tree. At that point, it's like the Buddha did not have any self-reference and did not identify himself with the self and the body. Yeah, it's like at that point, by his enlightened experience, he saw deeply into the nature of how things are. He saw really deeply into the nature of reality. And what he saw is that the self that he identified with was a construct, was a delusion. And he saw through the deluded nature of the self, and he broke through that delusion. So I'm going to try to explain that. Because I think even though we might understand with our mind, I think it's very difficult to understand fully what that means. And what happens most of the time, like myself right now, I identify Prajnaghosa, myself, with me. Yeah, I know I'm here, I can touch myself, and I identify myself with me being here, and you being out there, yeah? So it's like there's a subject here, and the world out there, it's like a universe. And there's definitely I'm experiencing a separation between those two things, yeah? So I experience the world within a sort of dual framework where I feel a separation within myself and everybody else, yeah? It's like the Buddha, at that point, saw the fact that this separation is a construct. on a deeper level of reality, it's not real. Yeah? And Buddhism will even say that that separation that we create ourselves is the root cause of all our suffering. Because when you have a self, I mean, in a way, having a self, it's kind of hard work. I don't know if you... It's like, you know, it's like me, Prajnaghosa, how I am feeling right now. Am I giving a good talk or a bad talk? Are you getting bored a bit now? Or is it really stuffy? Or maybe actually that really resonates with you? And maybe you're like, you know, thinking about, I don't know, maybe how you're doing right now, what kind of food you're gonna have later for dinner. And I you know, maybe the Mitras thinking about their Mitra talks. I don't know. But we always, whatever happened, we have a way to bring everything back to ourselves. Yeah. So imagine you don't have that. The Buddha completely let go of that self-identification. And when you let go into that self-identification, it's not that you completely disappear and you don't exist anymore. It's not like that. It's that you actually let go into love, into wisdom, into compassion, into freedom. Because imagine if you just let go of that sense of self. In a way, you're free. You've got nothing to protect. Yeah? In a way, if you don't have... The Buddha didn't identify also with the body. Yeah? So if you don't have a self-identification, for instance, you're not afraid of dying. Yeah? Because what I'm afraid of when I die is I'm afraid of the self dying. But if you don't identify with the self and you don't identify with the body, when you die, it's just the body who dies. Yeah? You identify with consciousness. So you've got no fear of death. And then you've got all the other fears. You transcended all the other fears as well, because you've got nothing to protect. So imagine if we come out of this room and just for a second, we let go of that self-identification. How much energy will be released, you know, out of that? Because this fear that we have keeps us trapped all the time. Yeah, all the time. And if you don't have that, it's like energy is being released. Freedom is being released all the time. And also what the Buddha saw, he saw into the deep interconnected, and that's a hard word to say, interconnectedness of all beings. He saw deeply and he realized the truth into all. Well, the fact that there's no separation with yourself and the world. Yeah? And when you see that there's no separation when yourself and the world, well, in a way what happens is love and compassion. Yeah? Imagine I let go of that self-identification and I realize that actually I'm connected with all life. Well, of course I want to connect with all life. Of course I want to feel a sense of compassion. He saw that actually reality is compassion. Yeah? So as we have this sort of subject and object framework, the Buddha had a way of being conscious where the subject and the object wasn't separated. Yeah. And as a result, he was in bliss. And he really experienced the bliss of his freedom. It was like at that point, it wasn't a physical change, it was a chemical change. Yeah. He could not go back anymore. He was free. And he sat down. So we had 7 days and 7 weeks. He sat down in a bliss of his experience. I mean, can you imagine? You get enlightened. I can't quite imagine that. But maybe you sit down and maybe in your mind you're just, you're free, you sing, you dance. I don't know what you do. But he was really experiencing the bliss of his experience. And we heard that from Shodamani. We heard that at some point, he wanted to teach. He wanted to share his experience. But he realized that actually what he saw was really profound. And we heard that, not easy to understand, you know, beyond mere reason. And, well, you know, something that not everybody will understand. And so he has doubt. And in the story, Brahma Sahapati, which is a deity, comes to him, and in a way Brahma Sahapati begs him to teach the Dharma. And we heard that he says, look, there's some that has little dust on their eyes, and they're wasting away from not hearing the Dharma. Please teach them the Dharma. And at that point, the Buddha has a vision. The Buddha has a vision of humanity as lotuses. We heard that, but I just want to say it again. I think it's quite important to not skip that part of the story. The Buddha saw that actually human beings were at different stages of evolution, like lotuses. So you've got this beautiful, magnificent image of lotuses in a pond, at different stages. Some are in the mud, submerged in the water, some are just coming out of the water, and some are fully bloomed, in the sunlight. So you can imagine lotuses at different stages of their life. And in the same way, the Buddha saw that human beings also were at different stages of evolution. And as a result, some will understand. And he wants to teach. He realized that he wants to teach. And what he does is that he stands up. And that, I think, it's a very important part of the story. He stands up and he thinks who he can teach. He's not quite sure. And he thinks about his previous teachers, they died. And he thinks about his friends. And he walks to Sarnath. And he teaches his friends. Yeah. Also, it's funny because she didn't skip that part of the story, Shramani, which I think was very good. But it's often skipped. And often you might think, if you've not been to India and if you don't know Indian geography, that actually Bodh Gaya and Sarnath are just next door. It's like we're here and the Buddha goes and he goes to meet his friends at Bogle Park. But it's not like that. Sarnath, it's actually 260 kilometers away from Bodh Gaya. Yeah, that's 360 miles. And in August, sometimes it reached temperature of 46 degrees. Actually, I chat GPT'd it. I checked it online. So imagine the Buddha standing up, having this deep feeling for the welfare of all beings, and walking with determination to Sarnath. Yeah. So that's quite a thing. And when he meets his friends, he teaches them the Dharma. And they understand. They understand the Dharma, and the Dharma was started. Yeah? The wheel of the Dharma was set in motion. Yeah? So in a way, what I've done, I did sketch out a brief life story of the Buddha to mention about 3 points which I think can be relevant for us today, but also were really relevant for enabling the Dharma to start the Dharma, the Buddha to start the Dharma. Yeah? So I'm going to mention about those 3 points. Yeah? So I know it's quite stuffy. You still with me? Yeah? Okay, good. So the first point is vision. Yeah? And the Buddha, several times in his life, when he was Siddhartha Gautama, and the Buddha as well, had vision. And I want to mention about 2 visions. The first one that he had, and the one that I want to mention, he's seeing the holy person. Yeah? And he sees that there's a way out, and there's another life that he could be living. Yeah? That's the first vision that he has. The second vision that he has is the vision of lotuses, and saying that human beings will understand the Dharma, and human beings can grow. Yeah. And as a result, he was able to teach. He was able to stand up and find his friend and start the Dharma. Yeah. Vision, it's absolutely key. Yeah. Without vision, the people perish. That's actually from the Bible. There are actually good things in the Bible. Vision brings clarity. If you have vision, you have clarity. If you've got clarity, you've got confidence. If you have vision, you can see where you're going. Yeah? Vision, it's absolutely essential for our spiritual life, but I think for everything, actually everything that you do in your life, you need to have some sort of sense of intuition and vision to see where you're going, to be able to head there. Yeah? However, the vision needs to be deeply rooted into universal values and truth. If your vision is, and let even alone Buddhism, in a way you could even say it doesn't matter about Buddhism, make sure that if you have a vision, it's deeply rooted in truth and universal values. Yeah. Our vision with our movement started in 1966, maybe even before that. That's when the movement started. Maybe before that, our teacher, Bhante Sangharakshita, the man who's actually the founder of our community, the founder of this movement, Triratna, started by giving meditation classes in a little tiny basement in Covent Garden. I mean, he must have been much more stuffy than now. Yeah. And out of that, now we've got a wonderful worldwide spiritual community, which actually is the first and the only Buddhist Western movement in our history. In history, full stop, actually. Our vision, us, with the Brixton community, started, I'm not exactly sure, it's hard to know exactly, people have different versions, but I'm going to say it started 24 years ago when we registered our community, our project. So our project is actually registered as a charity, and we registered the charity 24 years ago, with just a group of people. So it was just a group of people being there together and having a vision that things could flourish. The Dharma could flourish in Brixton, which is quite, it's quite a thought really. And then out of that, some people, 20 years ago, Amalad and I was there, went to the Brookwell Lido. I go to the Brookwell Lido all the time. I go to the gym, I go to the cafe, I go to the swimming pool. And apparently, at the Brookwell Lido, I was reading, it's very interesting actually, Amora Pushpa, she's written her history of the Brixton project, and I was reading it, and she was saying that at the time, people like Amala Vajra, Maitreya Bandhu, Satyadarsa, Ratnashuda, Amalada was around, were leading classes where the gym is now, at the Lido. And at some point they realized that the people who were running the Lido, they are not that interested in spiritual activities, you could say. And they were more interested in gyms. And what happened is that they were meditating next to a door with very loud music and gym music, so you can imagine. So at some point, obviously, they complained and they needed another space. So the people at the Lido, they gave them the cafe, which is now 400 rabbits. So for a while, which I didn't know because I go to the cafe all the time, I didn't know that our community sort of originated there, which is quite odd. So at the cafe, apparently they said that they loved the cafe, they loved that place, especially when it was sunny because they could see the shimmering of the light, in the water, in the pool, and it was absolutely lovely. However, in the winter it was too cold. So at some point, they decided to go to another place. And Ratnashuda was very instrumental in creating things and making things happen with Amora Pushpa actually. And at that time we went to Yoga Points. And Yoga Points we started to actually have a community and doing classes and Dharma classes. And apparently in 2009 we had our first Mitra ceremonies. And I've never been to Yoga Point myself, so I wasn't even there at the time. But apparently it was, again, very small, very stuffy, and with a very low ceiling. And you had to be very careful when you stood up because you could bang your hand on the ceiling. I mean, look at us now, and obviously, Suduka was the chair and it very much helped with the evolution of the project. Virnaga also was absolutely a key member in the project and made us where we are today here, and us, we've got a full community of people, and this wonderful community here today. And we might be at the brink of opening our own center. So whether you know it or not, this place that we've been using for the last 6 years or so, the lease is coming to an end, and the current tenants are not going to renew the lease. And we applied for the lease. And we're at that point where we are actually negotiating with Lambeth and we're in the process of negotiation. And the council had told them to continue the negotiation process with us, and we could be at the brink of starting up our own Buddhist center here, you know. So vision. Also, actually, I just want to pause and just thank Amaladana as well, and all the people who've been, like Maitrina and all, like Shradin, who've been absolutely key in this project. Amaladana has given so much of his time and his knowledge and expertise, actually, and enthusiasm, and I really want to thank him for, all of that. This community is a collective, collaborative project from people who have a vision. He has a vision. He can see what we want to do. Vision is absolutely key. Yeah? So vision, that's the first point that I wanted to highlight. The second point that I wanted to highlight is commitment. And I realized I skipped something in the life story of the Buddha. The Buddha, when he was Siddhartha Gautama, and when he saw the Bodhi tree, and he sat there, he made, you could say, the ultimate commitment. Yeah? He said to himself, my flesh may dry up, my flesh may wither, my blood may dry up, but I will sit here and gain freedom or die. Yeah? He was prepared to die in order to gain freedom. I think that shows actually real commitment and determination. Yeah? Commitment is absolutely key as well to growth. The Buddhist tradition is very key, very, very clear, sorry. The Buddha is very clear. Without commitment, there is no growth. Without commitment, what can happen, and I think I'm afraid to say is very much the danger of our modern life, is that we spend a life enjoying things, and things are just there for us. And when things are actually quite difficult, we bounce to the next thing, and then the next relationship, and then the next work, and then the next city, the next country, whatever it is. I think it's a real danger to our modern time, actually. But just generally, commitment is what allows you to grow, because when you commit, you learn. And you don't always learn the easy way. I've become the chair for the last 2 years. I've totally enjoyed it at times. I'm really pleased I've done it. But at times it was difficult. It has been difficult. But I am committed. I know I'm going to stay here at least for 5 years. So I've got 3 more years. Let's see what happens next year. But whatever you want to do, whether you want to learn to play an instrument, whether you want to be an artist, a job, a relationship, whatever you want to do in your life, the only way you get better at it is by committing. That's how you get better. Yeah. Without that, we can just go on to live a certain sort of extended adolescence and not getting anywhere in life. And I think that can be a tragedy, actually. I think that can be a real tragedy. We've got Joe and Alessio who are making a commitment today. So they probably know what I'm talking about. Yeah? Also, commitment is the antidote to doubt. Doubt can be such a hindrance in life, and one of the biggest hindrances in the spiritual life. Yeah? Here you go. If you want something to help you with that, commitment can really help. And when you're committing, you never know to what you're committing. You're always committing to the unknown. Yeah? And the Buddha at that time was committing to the unknown. He had no idea, and he was aware he could have died. Yeah? Commitment can also allow your vision to come into reality. Yeah? So commitment is absolutely key. Yeah? The third point that I wanted to highlight is action. Yeah? So the Buddha, when he had, in a way, his experience, he could have just stayed there. I mean, he was in bliss. In many spiritual traditions, the teacher doesn't go and find his disciples. That's not how it happens. In most of the spiritual tradition, when the teacher gains insight, he stays where we are. Where is he? And students, people find the teacher. Yeah, that's usually what happens in most traditions. The Buddha was not like that at all. The Buddha had his experience. He's so deeply into the nature of how things are, he's so deeply into the nature of compassion, and he stood up. And that's a sign of action. He stood up and he walked all the way through Sahana, which is like huge in a way, yeah? It's action, and he acted. That's absolutely key as well. Buddhism is a religion of action, yeah? It's not passive, it's active, yeah? I believe that's probably one of the reasons why it's not maybe as widespread as other major religion, because you actually have to do it. There is a saying in Buddhism that there is no holiday in the spiritual life. Yeah? It's not something that you just take on and you're just like, oh, I'm just doing that on Friday morning or Sunday morning or whenever. You just have to do it, and you do it. In a way, you do it out of insight and compassion. When you're spreading Buddhism, you're working for humanity. That's what Dr. Ambedkar said. Yeah. Maybe some of you might know him. Who knows Dr. Ambedkar? Maybe a few. Oh, that's a few hands up. That's good. So in case you don't know Dr. Ambedkar was the first law minister of India, where India became independent again in 1947. He was the first law minister, and he wrote the Indian Constitution. And what was interesting, and what people didn't know most of the time until he became the first law minister, is that he was also an untouchable. And what is an untouchable is that in India, with Hinduism, within the Hindu caste system, they have a caste system with different castes. And if you are at the bottom of the caste, you are an untouchable, you are an outlaw. Yeah? You are, in some ways, you are deprived from your very basic human rights, which is in a way a very discriminative caste system. And a lot of Indians today are still, I'm afraid to say, victim of this very cruel caste system. Yeah. And Dr. Ambedkar was aware of that, and because at the time, before he was actually the first law minister, the caste system was outlaw. So he drew the first Indian constitution, and he changed all the rules, and he made being an untouchable being something that wasn't punished by the law anymore. And he wanted to help his people, the other untouchable and the low caste, in a way to move away from the tyranny of that caste system. But he realized that changing law wasn't enough. He had to change consciousness. He had to actually change the way that people were thinking. And what was that? It was consciousness. And as a result, he decided that the best way to do that, it was to convert his people to Buddhism. And he was responsible for the mass conversion that happened in Nagpur in 1956, where he converted hundreds of thousands of people in an afternoon. Yeah. And we have a connection with Dr. Ambedkar through Bhante Sangharashita. And he said, spreading Buddhism, working for Buddhism, is working for humanity. When you're acting, when you're working for Buddhism, in a way you're working for something that is greater than yourself. And when you do that, you are in touch with a consciousness which is neither you consciousness or the group consciousness, but another type of consciousness which allows you to go deeper than yourself, yeah, and to grow. Yeah? So action is absolutely key as well. And how do we act? And this is where I want to end my talk. How do we act? Well, for us, in a way, we act within a spiritual community. And what we're trying to do here in Brixton, what we've tried to do all those years, we're trying to create a Buddha land. We're trying to create a new culture. That's what we're trying to do. It's not just a place, it's not just a community, it's something that's in a way enveloping everything. Yeah, it's a Buddha land, a new culture. A Buddha land, it's a place of meaning and value. Yeah? A Buddha land, it's a place where people grow and gain, in a way, full and perfect enlightenment. Yeah? A Buddha land is a place where people have a deep desire for the welfare of other people. Yeah? When you walk into a Buddha land, and when I think of that, I think of us. When you walk into a Buddha land, you walk into an atmosphere where people are treated with respect and dignity, regardless of where you're coming from. It doesn't matter. Regardless of your, in a way you could say, social caste, race, gender, ethnicity, it doesn't matter. Everybody in the Buddha land is seen as seeds of potential. Yeah. And I think that's us. That's us in a way. Our community, that's what we have, and that's what we want to see flourish. Yeah? Our community, I was saying that to you, our community has a sense of goodwill, a sense of enthusiasm, a sense of friendliness that is completely unusual and has something to actually offer to the world, and not something to take lightly. Yeah? But not only that, yeah, we're not just a sort of a social group or a spiritual group, we are a spiritual community. And what we have is at the core, we are holding something very precious, which is a transcendental vision. Yeah? Without that transcendental vision, it won't be a spiritual community, and it won't be the same thing. Yeah? So that's really what I wanted to talk about with you. It's how do you create the Buddha land? How do you keep turning the wheel of the Dharma? And in a way, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing already. What's the main ingredient of the Buddha land? The main ingredient of the Buddha land is friendship. The way we're going to take this community further and forward is by becoming more friends, by deepening our friendship. Yeah? The key to doing that are the Brahma Viharas. Yeah? Love, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. Yeah? It's not easy to do that. It's not easy to be friend. Myself and Maitrina is a real friend to me. A real friend to me. We lived together in 3 different houses for years, and sometimes we come up against each other. But it doesn't matter, because that's the nature of being friends. That's why we're friends, because we can go beyond our difficulties. And we need time for that. We really need context and time where we can really spend time together. I spend so much time with Amaladana. I see him at least twice a week. He comes to our place every week. He comes here every week where I come every week. We meet up outside. We have a team. We have a team so that we can create more friendships, and so that we can actually create a context where we can deepen communication and go beyond the superficiality of, superficial friendship. Yeah? So we need friendship, but we need another thing. What we also need a location. So location and institution are not the main ingredient to create a Buddha land. They're not a main ingredient, but they actually, they help. Because when you have institution and when you have location, you've got a context where you can actually become friends. Like this place, it has been absolutely key for us to become friends, to see each other, and to create that atmosphere where the Dharma can flourish. Yeah? And so, as I said, we might be at the brink of turning this place into the Brixton Buddhist Center. Yeah? To me, this is like a dream. I was on a solitary retreat. Actually, I came back on Tuesday. And when I came back, I was walking in Borkul Park, and it was quite sunny. And I was walking with Maitrina, and I have that. It's not just last Tuesday. It happens often, and it usually happens. I don't know why it happens in Borkul Park. When I have a dream of being in Brixton and seeing a center, a Buddhist center, thriving in the midst of an urban situation, where people are worshipping love, wisdom, and compassion, and a transcendental vision. What it will be like if you walk around Borkul Park and you are living within a culture where people are practicing the 5 precepts. How wonderful it will be, yeah? And I want to say about that because dream, it's where everything starts. And a dream, when a dream basically turns into a commitment, an action, a dream is not a dream anymore, it's a vision. Yeah? So I really want to encourage you to, in a way, share this dream with us and allowing us to, have these qualities, elements in your life of vision, commitment, and action. Yeah, so that we can keep turning the wheel of the Dharma together and allow that wheel to turn until, who knows? Thank you very much.